Well, I was homeschooled, and I actually was working at a pizza shop from the time I was 14. And I thought I was going to own a pizza shop one day. I realized real quick restaurants weren't for me because the hours that's involved in restaurant business.
Mm-hmm. Which I worked at McDonald's for a year and a half, and I worked at Walmart. So, and really, McDonald's was one of my toughest jobs I've ever had. Like to this day, it was insane. So when did you start getting into the process of making signs?
Like I mentioned, I worked at a pizza place, and right beside the pizza place was actually a sign company. And it was a small place, and I would go hang out with the guy on my breaks, and I just got an interest for it. And then, I don't know, about a year later, I put a word out if anybody was hiring anywhere. It didn't have to be signs. I wasn't even thinking signs. Just anything besides restaurants, I wanted the job. And just so happened, a guy I went to church with, he was moving to Atlanta, and he worked for a sign franchise and asked me if I would take that job. So that's actually how I got into the sign business.
Right. And that first day, what did you think going into the place?
It was a little overwhelming because I believe like most people, I didn't really understand what all a sign company did. I mean, you see signs everywhere, but you never think how they get there. And I realized there's a lot of process that goes into creating a sign. That was back in 2001. I was 17 when I started working for that sign company.
Mm-hmm. So did you catch on quick, or was it a learning process? Or
I did. I mean, for whatever reason, I had a knack for it, so I caught on super quick. Employees now, and I hate to say that because I love West Virginia, but here in West Virginia, finding a qualified employee, at least for my industry, is very hard because in Charlotte, like I mentioned before, there's thousands. So I could put an ad out on Facebook today and I could have my shop fully stocked with qualified employees in a week.
Right.
Here, it's a lot more process to get people that can do the job.
Right. Well, we've been training folks to leave, and people have even told me, like, man, you could be making so much money doing what you're doing in Charlotte.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, actually, we're profitable here, man. But thank you, I really appreciate. But yeah, and the business loans too. Like you said, like there's a point like to where you're paying salaries now, and you need to protect that revenue.
Yeah.
So, I mean, which business loans are usually low interest, and I imagine, you try to pay them off ahead of time.
Yes. And like you mentioned about employees and stuff, see, for years, it was me and my wife. So I never had anybody else to worry about other than me and my wife. But when I hire somebody, I take on their family. I don't want to hire somebody if I can't afford them. And when we first started, I mean, in my mind, I thought, wow, if I could just ever get to the point where I have $2,000 in my bank at all times, that would be awesome. Yeah. And now, if I had $2,000 in my bank, my people ain't getting paid this week. Right. I mean, so it's a whole nother world. By the time, as your business keeps growing, there is a lot more risk involved as well. Because one thing I've never done and I never want to do is look at an employee that's worked their butt off for my company and tell them, I can't afford you anymore, I'm going to have to let you go. So we try to protect that in any way that we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we kind of do the same thing. Like, I do not hire someone unless I can pay them for a year if we don't get a job tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of the rule of thumb that I try to go by. But so, what would you say to somebody who is kind of indifferent about starting a business in Appalachia? What kind of qualities do they need?
I mean, it's kind of funny that you're asking because I actually have an employee who has an opportunity to go out and do their own business, which is not a sign company, but I've encouraged them. Yeah, I don't want to see them leave, but they can make it. And that's not a question. I know their work ethic and I know all the other things about them, so I know they'll make it. But my my suggestions to them is get it done when you say you're going to get it done. Give them a good product and just follow up with your customers. If they ask for a quote, give them a quote. If they have a question that you don't know right now and you tell them you're going to get back to them, because a lot of people don't, and that will set you apart from that other person that never responded, and you'll get those jobs.